Welcome to Good Fruit Investors. So today I have my mom here. She's going to be sharing her story on when they set up their own financial plan. They actually sat down with a financial planner, went through a bunch of planning software and broke down all of their numbers. So I want her to explain just her journey, her path on, getting to that point, and then what her thoughts were before, what her thoughts were after that. So stay tuned for that. And also, if you're wanting to look at your own retirement goals, say you're younger like myself, and you're just looking at retirement, or maybe you're older and you're looking at retirement, I have a video where I explain just how you can assess your numbers within like 15 minutes to get just a really quick ballpark of where you might be at. As well as just, another level deeper where you can, create your own financial plan and know how to do that for yourself. There's lots of tools out there to be able to do those kinds of things. So I'll leave a link down below. You can go and check that video out, but we're going to get right into it. Why don't you tell people your story when it came to financial investing? I think the easiest way to look at it is maybe start from the beginning, where it all started for you. Why at the earlier stages of life you didn't necessarily get into financial planning.
Okay, so for us, we were married young, and then we had children right away. And our work never really brought in a lot of finances. A lot of times we were like, are we even okay to get the food on the table? And I know that that's a big issue for a lot. And so for us, I always had seen an importance for investing, but I never could even see where I could find $25 extra to be able to start that. So even though I was young, I knew that that was really what needed to be done. But whether I was going to take care and feed my children or whether I was going to invest, we just decided we have to do the one. So that was where we were at. But as you get older, then you start thinking, oh, now I'm too old to ever catch up. When they start saying you need millions to even be able to retire, it's like, how am I ever going to be able to get this amount of money? And so you just don't, you just kind of ignore it because it's easier than trying to look at it. And another thing that I would do is, it's like, I always thought it was kind of more like pie in the sky idea. Like somehow I needed to figure out, and it was too hard for me to learn because like we didn't have like Good Fruit Investors. We didn't have a lot of tools to be able to say, hey, this is really not as hard as you're letting it in your mind. And so for us, that's kind of why we didn't invest for the longest time.
And another thing too, for those that are watching, what I found was even as you start learning about investing, you start seeing that a lot of these things happened in the last decade or two. Even with knowing that why the market has been really efficient, and how people that are just self-investing and lowering their cost basis, how you can take advantage of different types of investment plays that way, where you can actually be competitive with financial advisors. It wasn't that kind of common thinking back then.
No, you only got your information just from a page in the newspaper to know even if things were going up or down. I didn't even know how to read that in the paper.
Right.
But then when you started and started talking to us about all of this, it was like you really challenged my thinking. And you broke it down and made it very practical in, okay, you can't save millions necessarily, but there are things you can do. And so it kind of brought encouragement to me to be able to think, yeah, maybe there are things that we can look at. And so then that's when we thought, okay, well, it's not going to hurt to put out to ask a financial planner to sit down and say, okay, how bad is this situation? And, what is it that we can do going forward?
Yeah. And what was your logic behind getting like a financial advisor? Like what were you thinking when you decided I should sit down with a financial advisor? And when you were looking for a financial advisor, what was that process like? Like when you were calling around, did you feel like every financial advisor you talked to was going to be a really good one to sit down with, or how did you vet that?
We were kind of nervous about sitting down with a financial advisor. We had heard of a lot of scams. We actually have friends that have dealt with scams in their lives and have lost even what they did have. And so talking with you, you were saying that we didn't have to do anything high risk and to be careful, and this is some of the things that you can look at when looking for a financial advisor. And so when we started looking, I asked simple questions, and I found like some of them wanted me to pull out huge amounts of risk and that I would be able to get my number up so high. And that was like, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't think I could sleep at night thinking I'm putting my whole house on the line here. And so then we found a financial advisor that was listening to where we were at and what we're comfortable with. And then kind of said, okay, this is the lifestyle that you're used to. How can we continue with that? And he was very low risk, which I really liked.
Right. Did you have any financial advisors that the way that they were incentivized was by having more of your money tied up in investments, so they make like a percentage on those investments?
Yeah, most of them wanted it that way.
Right. And the guy that you went with, how did
He was a
structure
totally
it?
independent, and
Right.
so he wasn't selling a product.
Yeah.
He wasn't even saying what he, put it in here or put it in there. All he did was look at my numbers, or my husband's and my numbers, and then said, okay, this is what amount you could invest. This is how you could take this much maybe monthly and look at what you could do here.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, where you're sitting right now, this is how much you're going to be looking at for retirement. Because we didn't even know that. We didn't know how much do you get for your pension? How much do you get? Like, we didn't know any of that.
And I think that's the real interesting point to point out, because I remember you saying, like one of them was, like when you were saying earlier about like wanting to pull out of your house and put it and just dump it all into the stock market, and that they wanted to invest it for you.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of times these financial advisors, that they can say that they have your best interests at hand, but it could still be skewed. They could have your best interests at hand, but skewed to profit their pockets, because if they're incentivized by just off of the sheer amount of investments that you have, they have to feed their own mouth and their own kids and whatever else they have. So they need to be able to create revenue, where I think the option that you chose was really wise, because you had a financial advisor. They're advice only financial advisors, where you're paying them a flat fee. And then they're just basically looking over your portfolio, and you're talking to somebody that has, the software and the knowledge, and they take all of your information. And that's really the difference between like good fruit investors and even financial planners, is the financial planner really sits down and assesses everything in your scenario, including your behavioral dynamic. And then they make a choice based off that by giving you advice, where when people go to good fruit investors, the difference with what we do is it's education first. And so the idea is, I don't want to pay that fee for myself to be able to sit down with a financial advisor and reassess my finances year over year. I could learn that education, use the same softwares that they use, and basically create my own types of plans, which is really a cool thing. So for anybody that's watching, just know, there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's lots of ways that you can do it. You can pay for a financial advisor, which is great. Education is always good no matter what. Or you can even just get yourself to a competent level of education where you're able to make those choices. Just like, people, they file their own taxes, and there's tax softwares that help them to do that. And for the most part, the softwares are getting a lot more sophisticated these days. And, when you look at returns that people can get, like humans have errors too, but a lot of the software, even with some of the AI and different things built in, it's very sophisticated, and it actually is able to really find all of those different types of hidden strategies and stuff like that.
And I think once we saw how practical and straightforward it was with the financial advisor, and then talking with you, knowing that you can get those programs and punch in your own numbers. What I like about that is because some of our numbers have changed, since our last time. And instead of having to go back and pay all this money again to get it revamped or retweaked, I can just sit down and kind of do that on our own and see where we're at.
Exactly. Because usually a financial plan is not always the same. Like your plans change. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of like sitting down, when they change or once a year and just making the adjustments to make sure that you accommodate for those changes. So thank you for sharing, Mom. I know that we talk about these things and maybe being in the camera is not always the funnest, but I appreciate you taking the time. And thanks for joining us. I hope that was an encouragement to somebody out there, and see you guys in the next video.